I'm Dr. Alexis Conason. I'm a clinical psychologist, and I specialize in the treatment of eating disorders and body image concerns. And I wanted to be a psychologist from a fairly young age because I was just always interested in what makes people do what they do and kind of this yearning to understand people because I really didn't for much of my life. So growing up with dieting being such a big part of my life and always this assumption that we had to be smaller and that my life would be better if I was smaller, I kind of pursued that quest in my career, initially trying to follow a career in weight management and weight loss. And what I started realizing is all of the things that we were telling people to do weren't effective and they were actually really harmful. And we were pathologizing a certain type of body and a certain, people that were living in that body. So that's when my passion changed from pursuing weight loss and actively participating in diet culture to starting to try to change diet culture and change the way that we view ourselves. Really, the way that I see eating disorders is about a preoccupation with food, about this idea that we can control our bodies and that that's going to give us some kind of better, magical, perfect life. And if we can just get this one area of our life under control, everything else will be okay. So I think that eating disorders are about, really a preoccupation where food and our body becomes the forefront of all that our life is about. The Western standards of beauty and the fashion industry is just a manifestation of our larger culture that is, very invested in having women feel not good enough about ourselves and have women convinced that we need to spin our wheels, focused around how we look rather than what we're doing and who we are. So I think that we've seen two sides to social media. On one hand, there's a lot of negative effects in context of eating disorders. We have more comparisons on social media than ever before, and we tend to compare ourselves with images that we think are real but aren't actually real life. They're highly curated images that have been photoshopped and staged. So there's some research that shows that the more time that we spend on social media, the worse the symptoms of eating disorders are, the worse we feel about our bodies, and also the more that we try to pursue the thin ideal. But on the other hand, we're seeing the emergence of some really amazing activism movements that have taken root in social media, things like the body positivity movement, health at every size, and the fat acceptance movement. And these are movements that I don't think would have taken steam the way that they have without the platform of social media. It's been able to give voice to marginalized bodies and marginalized groups, and we're also able to see a diversity of different kinds of images of bodies, and I think that's been a really powerful thing in the recovery movement. I am a strong believer in the health at every size movement, which believes that we really can be healthy across the weight spectrum and that weight does not determine our health or our well-being. Weight stigma has a lot of determination on our health and well-being, and living in a marginalized body is a very difficult experience in our fat phobic culture. But, weight in and of itself does not have a tremendous amount of bearing in our health. And it certainly doesn't have any bearing in our moral value or our value as a person. So I think that one of the reasons that there's not one definitive approach to the treatment of eating disorders is that eating disorders are diverse and the people struggling with eating disorders are diverse. So each treatment really needs to be looked at on an individual level. However, I think that we've really been addressing eating disorders only from an individual level, and that's been problematic because it's largely a cultural problem. And when we look at statistics like 91% of women feel dissatisfied with their body, I think it's about 54% of men feel dissatisfied with their body. That really is speaking to the fact that it's not something that's going on just inside of our minds, but something that's going on in our culture. And I think to truly treat eating disorders at its source, we have to treat our culture. Healthy bodies come across the size spectrum, and it really is about what is a healthy body for you. Where does your body settle when you're eating in tune with what your body needs? You're adequately nourishing your body, and whatever weight, shape, and size that settles at is the healthy shape and size for you. I also think a healthy body is one where we can live our lives without feeling preoccupied about maintaining a certain weight, shape, or size, and we can have a slice of birthday cake at a birthday party and not think about it afterwards, not worry about it. So I think the number one thing that we can do to change our relationship with food and with our bodies is to be more compassionate towards ourselves, to learn to relate to ourselves with a sense of non-judgmental observation and acceptance and kindness and love and compassion. And that lays the foundation for change, and that's the path to moving forward. So once somebody has realized that they need help, the most important thing that you can do if you're struggling with an eating disorder is seek out a licensed mental health professional, a specialist in eating disorders, and start getting set up with a treatment team. They will be able to evaluate what is the appropriate level of care for you. Do you need a residential program, a day treatment program, an outpatient program, and any other kinds of specialists that you need in your healing. Mindfulness has been a really powerful tool in changing not only the way that we relate to food and our body, but ultimately the way that we relate to ourselves. And I think that when we can start observing the internal dialogue that's going on in our minds all the time and notice the things that we say to ourselves, that can create a really big shift. And moving away from the idea that we're broken, that there's something wrong with us and that we need to be fixed, when we can learn to listen to ourselves and listen to our body and regain or gain for the first time a sense of trust in ourselves, that's really powerful. So my message of hope is that change is possible. I've seen it happen time and time again, and I've seen people who have struggled with eating disorders and disordered eating for so many decades of their life make radical changes in the way that they feel about themselves, the way that they feel about their eating. So hope is there, change is possible, recovery is possible.